Hello, thanks for listening to the Finance Leadership Podcast. It's your fortnightly focus on the latest information and news about the Finance Leadership Program. It's produced by AICPA and CIMA together as the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. You can find out more as usual at aicpa.org and cimaglobal.com. Today you're listening to myself, Kevin Gormley, and I'm joined with a colleague of mine who works in the Finance Leadership team. His name is Doug Bowman. So, hi Doug, welcome to the podcast. And if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself, that would be great, please.
Hi Kevin, fantastic to be here. And I'm responsible for developing and maintaining the learning content within the CGMA Finance Leadership Program.
Okay, thanks Doug. What we're here to talk about today with Doug and to leverage his expertise is quite an exciting thing that's happening, the Finance Leadership Program, in terms of eligibility and accessibility for some students. So we are launching our foundational level, and that's coming on stream after the 24th of April, 2023. So just dating that, so anyone listens back to this at a later point, this may be old news at that time, but this is getting launched in response to demand from students who wish to access the CGMA Finance Leadership Program that may not have eligibility requirements met. So don't come from a qualification background that enables them to be exempt to commence at the professional level of the qualification. So some of our students, partners, stakeholders might be familiar with this concept in the alternative pathway to CGMA, which is the self-directed learning route. And they have their entry level qualification, which is known as a certificate in business accounting. So just some context so you can appreciate what we're doing here with part of the Finance Leadership Program is we're evening things up in terms of allowing students to get the skills and the competencies at that entry level to enable them to be successful as they move through the professional qualification of the syllabus. So that's what we're here to talk about. We're going to explore what the foundational level is, what's contained within it, how long it'll typically take, etc. So one of the first things people are going to ask about, Doug, is what is the foundational level and what's included within it?
Sure. There's lots of things here that we could talk about, Kevin. Well, let's start with the fact that the foundational level is our new entry point into the CGMA Finance Leadership Program. This is really an exciting opportunity for prospective students. To expand a bit more, the foundational level introduces students to business and finance concepts, many of which the students starting at this level will be learning for the first time. Simply put, it builds the foundational knowledge required to prepare students for the more advanced learning within the three levels of the program that follow: operational, management, and strategic level. If we're realistic here, Kevin, students that have not previously studied the concepts covered in the foundational level, like business ecosystems, the macroeconomic factors affecting business, supply chains, corporate governance, business regulations, accounting frameworks, product costing. I could go on and on. These concepts can potentially be very difficult initially. So the foundational level breaks things down in a simplified and understandable way and provides business context to give the learning real meaning. And a key thing for prospective students to remember here is that they'll see much of what's covered in foundational level again in subsequent levels, just in a more advanced context.
So obviously we're introducing students to the topics, but then deeper dives happen as they move through the professional qualification. What is the structure of the foundational level?
Prospective students starting at the foundational level, Kevin, will not have prior knowledge with the Finance Leadership Program or FLP. Let's start with FLP overall, and then we'll move more directly into the foundational level. I'll try to paint a picture here. So there are 4 levels to FLP, beginning with the new foundational level, again followed by the 3 main levels: operational level, management level, and strategic level. Levels are comprised of competency areas, or competencies as you may hear us call them, which are major milestones for students completing their FLP journey. Now, for context, the foundational level is comprised of 3 competency areas, which compares to between 10 and 12 competency areas at each of the higher levels. So that tells you right away that the foundational level is significantly condensed relative to the other levels that follow. Once inside a competency area, you'll find skill sets, which are simply groupings of related courses or study topics, to use FLP vocabulary. Typically, competency areas have 2 to 4 skill sets, but it varies. Skill sets serve to group related topics and aid in monitoring and displaying student progression via the student dashboard in FLP. So now we're down to the actual units of study material on which students are assessed, the topic, which is FLP vernacular for course. The foundational level has 23 study topics across its 3 competency areas, relative to the other 3 levels that average slightly more than 100 study topics each. You can again see that the foundational level has been right-sized for optimal comprehension and knowledge retention for this type of introductory level. Let me recap. So the structure of the foundational level mimics the structure of the other levels, which are broken down into competency areas, then skill sets, then finally the study topic or course. And as a final point on this, the division of FLP into levels is modeled after the CIMA Professional Qualification syllabus that underpins the CGMA designation. Remember, I referred to the 3 levels that follow the foundational level in FLP as the main levels. Well, that's because they align to the 3 levels of the CIMA syllabus. The CIMA syllabus does not have an introductory level like the foundational level. Instead, its starting point is the operational level on the basis that students will have obtained the requisite and prior knowledge through other means. With the release of the foundational level, prospective students now have a new study pathway to do that.
Great. We've given students the appropriate skills needed to be successful at operational level and above, but we've done it in a really condensed, concise way in terms of, you just look at the number of topics, for example, it's much more on operational level, but it's intended to be that manner so people can move up through the qualification in an efficient manner.
Exactly. They'll have the competence to fully engage with the subsequent levels of the program.
Great. Very exciting for those students who are wanting to start. In terms of the assessment methodology, so some of our students, some of our customers are familiar with the assessment model we use at the professional level in the Finance Leadership Program. What type of assessment do we use in the foundational level?
As with all of FLP, the foundational level utilizes both formative and summative assessment techniques. I can go through those briefly. Formative assessment is really just a way to help support students to become better self-directed learners. Formative assessments are ungraded and help learners identify their strengths and weaknesses for purposes of understanding those areas that may require further study. In FLP, the 2 predominant types of formative assessment within the foundational level are, firstly, the knowledge check questions. These are served up to students as they progress through the study topics, and they're designed to allow students to self-assess their grasp of the learning concepts. They do this with the feedback that's provided, and with that they can make their own assessment as to whether they feel comfortable that they're understanding the material. Then secondly, at the end of every competency area, students are presented with a business simulation assignment, or BSA, they may hear them referred to. These are scenario-based practice questions designed to ensure students build the capacity for integration and synthesis of the material, which is going to be really important for case study exam purposes. Now I'll shift gears and talk a little bit about summative assessments in FLP. Summative assessments have a singular purpose, Kevin, and that's simply to measure proficiency. So they are graded, and therefore they're a higher stakes assessment in comparison to formative assessment. FLP has a formative assessment at the end of every study topic, and we refer to those as TLAs or topic level assessments. TLAs are served up to students at the end of each study topic in an adaptive manner, which just means that students may be presented with different numbers of TLAs for the same topics, depending on how quickly or not proficiency can be established. Students are not necessarily expected to be able to complete the TLAs correctly on the first attempt. Some topics are just more intrinsically complex than others. So it's perfectly fine if students need to revisit a topic's learning and assessment more than once. There's no negative consequences associated with doing that. But eventually all TLAs will need to be completed. The last thing I would say is, unlike the other 3 levels of FLP, there is not an option to do pre-assessments for any of the study topics in the foundational level. If students are required to start their FLP journey at the foundational level, it is important they complete the learning and assessments for all of the assessed study topics, rather than having an option to test out of the study topic.
Okay, and typically, what are we forecasting in terms of the learning time for the foundational level? What sort of estimates do we have?
Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be top of mind to any prospective student. As with any self-directed online learning program, completion times are going to vary based on the specific circumstances of each student. So, for example, whether they're working and how many other outside commitments they may be taking on concurrently with FLP. But if we're talking about the foundational level specifically, again, which has no case study exam, the time frame is going to be much shorter than that required for the higher levels, which we estimate to be likely upwards of 3 months. So it's really a good investment in one's time and resources for this foundational level. A bit of really good news here is that when we launched the foundational level, the overall subscription prices for FLP are not changing. So prospective students are getting this added benefit at no additional charge.
Okay, and current students will benefit from foundational level also because even though they're exempt, they still will have reference material available on the platform should they maybe want to delve back into an earlier level and maybe find out some term or technique or an understanding of topic that maybe they got an exemption for, studied it 3 years ago and forgotten aspects of it. So it does have benefits to prospective, but also I think new students, because the financial management elements that are tested at the operation level are quite challenging, and to have a good bedrock of knowledge and easy access to a refresher would definitely be beneficial for those students.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The material would be there for all subscribers. So yes, if they hit an area that they want to refresh on, the foundational level would be perfect for that.
And we don't have a case study exam for the foundational level. Could you tell us why?
Yeah, the foundational level was not built to be a standalone qualification, and therefore there is no high stakes exam requirement. We've previously talked about other forms of assessment in the foundational level, like TLAs, that are more appropriate, Kevin, for its intended purpose. That said, the higher levels of FLP, operational management, strategic, are in direct alignment with the corresponding levels of the CIMA Professional Qualification syllabus. And for each of those, students are required to complete a case study exam in addition to the assessments within FLP. And another point on this, and this goes back to something you mentioned earlier, for students who may be seeking more of an entry-level qualification initially than the CGMA designation, an alternative to the foundational level is also available, which is CIMA's Certificate in Business Accounting. It's a more in-depth program than the foundational level, and it's 4 objective test exams. And students completing the Certificate in Business Accounting are then qualified to start their learning journey towards the CGMA designation if they choose, and they would be exempted from the foundational level, having already completed the Certificate in Business Accounting.
We do launch a new website in April as well, at the same time when foundational level is released, which will allow students to move and transfer from Cert BA to our foundational level. However, I would just like to stress that in terms of credit, say for example you're 2 modules out of the 4 complete in the Certificate in Business Accounting and you want to move to foundational level to complete the CGMA program to get fully qualified, you will not get credit for those 2 modules because foundational level and Cert BA are 2 different things. They're intended to be 2 different things and they don't use the same syllabus. Many areas are similar, are exactly the same. However, we could only really credit students if there was an equivalence on the other side. So if you move partially completed, you will not get credit, just so students are aware of that. But you will obviously have moved into the foundational level under the Finance Leadership Program. And obviously there's advantages of doing that with your pursuit of CGMA. So just be aware that you can switch from one way to the other and vice versa, but there is limitations there. That is not the case at professional level where you get full credit for any completed and passed exams. One question I have, Doug, what about user interface and how will this look to the learner?
In the online platform, the foundational level will appear on the competencies page as a new tab alongside the existing tabs for the 3 other levels. The look and feel will be very similar to the other levels. In fact, the platform is very intuitive. It's easy to navigate. It's not full of clutter that gets in the way of a good learning experience. And all this is by design for the benefit of the students. We've just desired a real clean look, and I think students will find that when they see the platform. And like all of FLP, it delivers manageable chunks to let students get their feet wet before diving into the deep end. We really don't want students feeling overwhelmed. By students easing into things, they can engage with the program when and where they are most comfortable doing so, which we know increases comprehension and retention.
We've all seen internally here what this looks like. And it's the same user interface, very slick, very easy to use, very straightforward. Shouldn't confuse anyone. Even myself didn't seem to have any problems with navigating it. So it'll be well received once we release this. Thanks, Doug, for all your contributions today. It's been very insightful and detailed. And I think this will really help people fully understand what we're doing here with the platform.
Thanks, Kev.
I suppose one final thing I would say is just to reiterate that we release foundational level on the 24th of April. So we are doing a systems refresh and upgrade and improving our outward-facing customer experiences. And this all comes live on the 24th of April. As part of that, we're obviously releasing the foundational level. So for anyone who wishes to avail of this, they'll be able to apply and go through the process of subscribing after that date. Okay, so there's plenty more to explore about this topic. So our show notes will have the links to all the resources that we've talked about and information on the foundational level. To view them, just click in the podcast app or on your smartphone or tablet. Or open the episode on your computer's web browser, you'll see everything right there. For more information, go to enroll.cgma.org. Thanks again to Doug, and thanks everyone for listening. If you know a friend or colleague who could use this information, feel free to share with your networks. You'll see the sharing buttons in the podcast app. That's it for now. We'll have another episode in 2 weeks. Till next time, goodbye.
This content is designed to provide illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the AICPA, the Association, or CIMA. It is provided with the understanding that they are not engaged in offering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If such advice or expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. The AICPA, the Association, and CIMA make no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to, and assume no responsibility for, the content or application of the material contained herein, and especially disclaim all liability for any damages arising out of the use of, reference to, or reliance on such material.